right, you're just in time for the Monday Report Town Hall session where we're talking about campaign decorum, how to tame the tongue, what constitutes hate speech. That's a conversation we're having, and the rising rhetoric that's ongoing in the political scenes right now. Joining me in studio is Sam Corner, who's the NCIC Commissioner. Thank you so much for making time. Reverend Sami Wanaina, All Saints Cathedral Provost, is joining us from Mombasa online. Thank you so much for making time as well. Rev, I'll start with you. What are your views on this current political spat between the leaders allied to the president and the leaders allied to the deputy president?
You know, the president should be the symbol of national unity. When a president takes a certain direction, political direction, openly, it is not wise. It is not good. He should be the one uniting Kenyans, and Kenyans have the right to choose the leader they want. The problem you will have when you have a president taking a political decision is that there will be people who will be aligned to him, and there are people who will be against him. And that is exactly what has happened. And we have now a divided presidency, the deputy and the president himself. Unfortunately, both of them have used their public office to influence political decision, which is wrong. Both of them, I've had some say the deputy should resign, but you should also argue the same way when it comes to the president. And that's why whenever we have a public office, we deny ourselves the right to say certain things. Our biggest concern as the religious leaders is actually when the president openly attacks his deputy. To me, that's where the campaign decorum begins. When a couple, and I'll use a family context, when a couple have a problem, their children may not understand the nitty-gritty of the challenge they are facing. Therefore, when the father accuses the mother publicly, the children get embarrassed. They even don't know what to do. And the wife, as well, attacks back. Then the children get divided. So I've used that analogy to say, if we have personal problems, we should deal with them at a private level. And allow the political discourse in a country to take root without much interference.
So in this case, who should stop? Because there are those who say that, in your own words, that they seem to be embarrassing the nation. Who should be the one to first call the truce? Because the clergy at some point tried to reconcile the two leaders, but it seems tempers are still flaring.
Definitely, it is the senior most who has the right to do that. If the president restrained himself from making such utterances and attacking or insinuating on his deputy, I can imagine, and this one is proven, and we can check. I don't think the deputy has started with the attack. It is always the president who begins, then the deputy and his team attacks back. It becomes ugly. And always, when you are given a senior office,
Reverend, I think someone is trying to call you, so just stop that and then we'll get back to you. We've lost your sound there. But let me bring in Sam Corner on this, NCIC Commissioner. Commissioner, what do you consider inflammatory remarks from the NCIC perspective? Without getting into the nitty-gritties of the current conversation in terms of who said I'll slap who said what will happen where, what does the NCIC consider inflammatory remarks that is likely to elicit some kind of anger in different people?
Thank you very much, and I would like first of all to begin by stating some good things that have happened in the country. last month, NCIC led Kenya in launching the first plan of action against hate speech the country has ever had. Secondly, it is the first plan of action that to be developed by any country in the world. So Kenya is the first country in the world to develop a plan of action to manage hate speech, which is a response to the UN Secretary General's strategy and plan of action on management of hate speech, which was set up in 2019. So we are actually the first country to translate that plan of action for the UN into a national action plan. In terms of what constitutes hate speech, it is a good conversation to have in Kenya because between 2018 and now, some of the cases Kenyans have brought to NCIC, almost 70% of them have been sent back to other agencies because there is limited understanding of what constitutes hate speech. But in the simplest terms, hate speech is the use or transfer of any content, be it verbal, written, electronic, that is aimed at either insulting other people or they're abusive in nature, and sometimes also threatening. So if whatever you are conveying through whatever medium is threatening to another person or abusive or insulting, they constitute a section of what hate speech is. The second part of it is those actions or content that you are translating must also qualify to either be stirring hatred or aiming to cause harm to whoever is directed at, or even incitement to violence. So where we focus more is the intention of the content you are transmitting, whether they are inflammatory, abusive, or insulting. Do they also qualify to cause harm? Are they aimed at causing hatred of any kind? And are they supposed to incite any form of violence? So that, in a nutshell, what constitutes hate speech. However, if you want to see it also in a more positive way, anything that is threatening to diversity, inclusion in our society, and even the kind of society we want to mold, anything that is threatening to that in terms of tolerance, inclusion, diversity, that also is another way of seeing that that particular act may qualify to be an act that can be under hate speech act.
Let's talk about two things you've mentioned, threatening and insulting. So when a conversation comes up and there's an allegation of a leaked audio of the deputy president claiming that he thought of slapping the president, is that threatening? And in reverse also, the brigades that have also come through, because this is coming from both sides, some people have said so-and-so ni mwizi. That is insulting. Do those two things constitute hate speech? Because one seems to be threatening, others are insulting, and they've been insulting each other on both sides.
As I said, the mere act of insulting or abusing do not end there. I already said you need to see the intention of that particular abusive language or insulting language that somebody has used, whether it is meant to create harm to the person that is directed or the group that is directed, or hatred. Because you can never take hate speech without putting it into the context under which it is used. So in this particular case, revealing what the deputy president was intending to do to the president and the reaction that has been there does not, for me, cross the threshold of hate speech, unless we prove that that particular act actually was aimed at creating bodily harm or creating animosity between the supporters of one group and the other, or meting actual violence on the person. So far, what we've been able to hear is what happened, but what was the intention? So we need now to interrogate and go beyond that.
And that's what I want to know, because at what point does the NCIC draw the line? Because you see, there's the conversations between the two, okay? People who've known each other, then the executive. And then there's the public that also come in as their supporters. Where does the NCIC draw the line between verbal attacks meant to rile an individual and the ones that are risk an entire community? Most of these leaders always go back to their communities. Walisema, they say this, Nijuyetu, they make it seem like it's no longer a personal issue, it's like a community conversation.
You see, and that's where now NCIC comes in, because most incidences of hate speech actually lead to actual violence when that particular statement is used and manipulated using existing or pre-existing community grievances to advance a particular goal.
Yeah.
So for this particular one, what is unfortunate about it is whatever differences the president and the deputy had have now come into the political space where they are being used for political mobilization and for political campaigns, which ideally should not be the case, because this is an issue that happened several years ago. And if there were any concerns about it, then they should have been mentioned at the time. Now, bringing them on the table, on the platform of political campaigns, now raises our eyebrows as NCIC, because what we will pay attention to is this discussion or discourse going to create animosity between one ethnic group and the other? Is it going to create anxiety? Is it going to instigate violence? That is now where NCIC comes in.
Yeah. And
we are tracking, of course, every statement that is being made by every campaigner today in the country, because hate speech is usually the biggest precursor of any form of political violence, not only in Kenya, anywhere in the world. Secondly, it's also one of the precursors of the worst cases of atrocities that the world has experienced in terms of genocide, mass war crimes, and so on.
Yeah.
So it's not a small thing when we speak about hate speech. And that is why we will allow political leaders and groups to exercise their freedom of speech, but also caution them that within the laws of Kenya, our constitution itself says that if your freedom of speech crosses the line where now you are inciting people into violence, then your freedom of speech and association is curtailed by the Constitution of Kenya.
Yeah.
There are also other legal frameworks, like the Media Act. The Media Act basically talks about using derogatory language and all that manner of thing. Our own NCIC Act has its own definition of what constitutes hate speech.
Yeah.
And of course, others like the Kenya Information and Communication Act. So the framework of legislation that exists to deal with issues of hate speech in Kenya is big, is broad, including the penal code, which we also use to manage any offense that is going to trigger that.
Okay.
So even if it is not managed under the NCI Act, it can be dealt with other legislation.
So as we speak, NCIC is focusing on this conversation around the spat between the slap and all that, because it's counter accusations and it keeps taking different forms. Is that what you're saying?
We are monitoring everything.
Okay.
Not only the conversation that you've highlighted, but there are many other conversations that are going in the political scene and the political arena.
Okay.
We are monitoring all of them.
Okay.
Physically and also online.
Okay, we'll come back to talk about how then do you prove such cases when you've had a recording and all, and the clips that people keep taking. But let me bring in Reverend on this. Reverend, we lost your sound there earlier on, but we were talking about the attempts at reconciliation of the executive. How far did that go, and why did it seem like it has failed?
Oh, sorry if you lost me at some point. The role of the church is, first of all, to sensitize the public, especially during this time of campaigning and the general election, on how we can be able to have peaceful and credible elections. And to me, there are different players into this, so that we can surely be able to have a credible election. But it starts with how we sensitize and socialize the public. Unfortunately, in Kenya, when our leaders use their platforms to actually attack their opponents instead of selling their manifestos and agendas to the public, who will decide, they now want to use their influence to incite the public. And you see what is happening slowly, and some can confirm this, is we are halting into some level of tension, because when one attacks the other opponent, then the opponent is bound as well to attack. That is not civility. And I think what I would call for is civility. Civility should start from the highest office of the land. Our president, and I would urge him, and we have urged him as a church, please, Mr. President, kindly resist the temptation of spewing any information or any emotional anger to the public. It is not helping. It is making the situation even worse. You have been given authority by the country. Please maintain some level of civility. That is the same message we are giving to the deputy as well. The fact that you are attacked does not also give you the right to attack back. To answer your question directly, we have used different methods to try and reconcile the two, to understand exactly what happened. And your guess is as good as mine. We have not succeeded, and we do not know what exactly happened. Therefore, if we cannot be able to reconcile this matter, then let us not bring it into the public and use it against the opponents. You've asked, for example, the issue of the video that is doing, not the video, it's actually an audio that is doing round. Number one, we don't know the source. We haven't said it is the opponent of the deputy who has released it. We don't know. And in this time of internet, anybody can come up with such. We also know now people can do Photoshop. They can do voiceovers. And so to try and prove that that is the DP, I wouldn't go that direction, because then I need to ask, what is it that I didn't hear? Because I've only heard the little. Therefore, we haven't been able to reconcile. It may not happen in the 35 days, and if it happens, it will be a good miracle to happen. But whether it happens or not, people differ. Even in marriages, people differ. Divorces are declared, but people don't need to wash their dirty linen in public. We are beseeching on our leadership. So it starts at the leadership. Yeah. Then it comes to the individual Kenyans themselves. You see, and we have said this in the past, our leaders, when this nation burns, surely they will be affected, but they will not be affected as much as the masses. Therefore, we are asking you, and our democracy has grown, Trevor. I don't think in the last 5 years, the kind of discussion people are having without raising emotions would have happened as it is. Therefore, we are growing towards what you would call a stable democracy. And democracy is fundamentally based on the fact that you choose whom to lead you against another person. So it's fine for people to be divided towards a particular type of a leader. But that doesn't give you the right then to attack, to harm, to mudsling your opponent. No, I can be able to support a particular political candidate without mudslinging on the opponent.
Okay. I have to take a quick break here, Provost. When we come back, let's talk about now ways to ensure that this is tamed, how people can make sure that there's not much rhetoric. And also, there's a lot of feedback coming through at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. #MondayReport. I'll sample some of them in just a bit, right? See you shortly.